Welcome back to another episode of the Young Guides Podcast. I'm Keaton, and this is...
I'm Kyle.
But first, we're going to bring a word from our partners.
First up, we got Heather's Choice. Normally, we'd be telling you guys about our code that you can use on the website, the Young Guides 15, which, if you want to, you can. But right now, we have a 30% off site-wide sale to get rid of our old product as we're introducing new product into the lineup here very soon. So we got to get rid of all of our inventory so we can restock and get you guys new recipes, changes to our old recipes, some new flavors you haven't seen. So if you use the code clear the shelves 30 at checkout, you can get yourself 30% off. There are some flavors we're completely getting rid of. And again, some that we're bringing to you brand new. And since I work at Heather's Choice, I've had a direct part in our research and development process and bringing you guys these new flavors. And I won't spill the beans exactly yet on what we're bringing you, but I know you guys are going to love it. I cooked a bunch of it today. I smell like it. I smell good. And I'm ready to tell you guys all about it. Once it's released, Keaton and I are going to hop on here and we're going to talk to you about those new recipes. So clear the shelves 30 at heatherschoice.com. Get yourself 30% off at checkout. Keaton, back to you.
That is exciting news, Kyle. I think I might have to take advantage of that.
Heck yeah.
All right, next up, we have Lucky Bug Lures, home of the Bingo Bug, Zombie Max, Fusion Extreme, Lucky Plug, F-Bomb, and Pike Bomb. Recently, I just picked up some for myself. I'm looking forward to fishing it. They look like some great bass lures and some predator lures, and nothing like fishing largemouths in the summer. It just gets me going, and I'm so excited. So get yourself some of Lucky Bugs today, and yeah.
Heck yeah. Next up, we have Northern Knits, handmade wool hats from Anchorage, Alaska. She'll make you any combination you want, pom-pom, no pom-pom. She loves making them. You can find Northern Knits on Instagram or on Facebook to place your order today and see what inventory she has available, or to get in contact with her and see what she can make and then figure out exactly what you want. So Northern Knits, Instagram and Facebook. Check it out. Keaton and I both have them. You can find her on Instagram under the name at northern._.knits.
Next up, our friend Matt at Alaska Rod Co. just released a new lineup of rods for the 2022 season. He has some awesome new rods, including both spinning and fly fishing rods. But first, the spinning rods. They have a lineup of 8 freshwater spinning rods with action and power for anglers chasing big, aggressive fish with lengths ranging from 6 foot to 9 foot. There are plenty of options for various applications and styles. In a world full of mass-produced rods, Alaska Rod Co. makes sure that their rods and service provides what other brands cannot. Rods built and tested in Alaska.
Alaska Rod Co. fly rods are built for harsh environments while maintaining the utmost level of craftsmanship. Right now, Alaska Rod Co. has 9-foot fly rods ranging from 5 weights to 8 weights. 10-foot single hands, switch, and spey rods will be available late this winter or spring. There's enough rod companies out there trying to build the next lightest and flashy rod. Alaska Rod Co. is here to build you a rod you can pass down generations. Fishing means many things to many different people. Alaska Rod Co. is honored to build you the ultimate tool that connects you to that meaning.
We appreciate you guys for taking the time and listening to our podcast, me and Kyle. We see you listening, we hear you, giving us good intel on our podcast and how it's going. Make sure to go over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review if you can. And even leave us a little comment. Tell us how we're doing, if we're doing good or maybe not. Now Spotify is also offering that. If you go there and if we're doing great, give us 5 stars. We'd really appreciate that. We want to just thank you for listening to our podcast if you're tuning in every week. Yeah, we're excited, and we're excited to bring you some new stuff in the 2022 season.
Heck yeah. We really appreciate you guys tuning in. We're seeing the ratings. We're seeing the reviews. I just checked while Keaton and I were talking. We now have listeners in 21 states and we have listeners in other countries. So that's super cool to know that we have people. We're I guess internationally, all right, Keaton. People are listening to us all over the place, so we really appreciate you guys listening. Lets us know that we're doing the right thing, and we've had some people reach out on our Instagram and let us know what they think about the podcast, giving us some really good feedback, which we really appreciate, and we're putting that toward our future episodes. So appreciate you guys. If it wasn't for you, Keaton and I would be talking into microphones to each other for no reason other than to look at each other for 3 hours at a time, which honestly isn't that bad.
Well, on your end, but anyways, also I just want to point out we hit 1,000 listens, and that is huge for us. For we've only been going a couple months here, so we appreciate you guys. Me and Kyle can't thank you enough. Please keep staying tuned. If you can, make sure to go on our Instagram. We share upcoming episodes. We'd like to have questions for our guests coming onto our podcast. And if you could share, when we're posting a podcast that's going live, if you don't mind sharing it to your friends, we would really, really appreciate that. Anything else, Kyle?
I think that's it. I think we should get into this episode with Jordan Perrego.
Here we go. Awesome. Welcome back to another episode of the Young Guys Podcast. I'm Keaton, and
I'm Kyle.
And today we have a very special guest on. We have Jordan Perrego. Is that right?
Yep, you got it right.
Guided 4 years for trout, grayling, and char and pike. And when the season ended there, he became a moose packer. So we're very excited to have him on. We're going to learn a little bit about his story and about where he came from and where he's going. So without further ado, how you doing, Jordan?
I'm doing great. Just another day in paradise.
Another day in paradise. Nice.
Heck yeah. And you're in Anchorage, right, Jordan?
Yeah, I'm in Anchorage. Full-time student.
Heck yeah. So Jordan, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up and all that?
Yeah, of course. So, I grew up in Virginia, Southern Virginia, kind of southwestern, about an hour south of Blacksburg. Grew up just playing in the woods. My dad, I'd fish with him every summer because my parents were divorced. So I'd spend the summer fishing with him wherever he was stationed because he was in the Army. So I fished tackle for bass. We did a lot of bass fishing tournaments, like the Wednesday night working man tournament. That was fun as a kid. And then bounced around Virginia for a little bit and then graduated high school from a small town, and then did 1 year of college in Virginia, and then decided to move up to Alaska in 2017, and I've been up here ever since.
Nice. So what was your fishing, and can you elaborate more on your fishing as a kid? Kind of like did you start out fly fishing? Did you start out gear fishing? Kind of just all about that background.
Yeah, so it was 100% gear fishing. I didn't touch a fly rod until about 2 months until I moved to Alaska. And so it was all gear fishing just for like bait casters, spinning reels, all for bass. Let's see. We did do it was primarily on lakes too, whether we were just like hiking in or my dad had a bass tracker, so we would just use that in the summer times. The New River, which is one of the oldest rivers in the world, fun fact, we would float that from about a little bit south of West Virginia. We'd float it for about 12 miles and we'd catch smallmouth, and that was super fun. I'm going to do that float again with a fly rod one day. But that's kind of really what really sparked it. Was we did that trip once when I was in like elementary or middle school. Mm-hmm. And then from there, just kind of, I did it again with some buddies. I did it again right before I left Virginia. And then when I came up to Alaska, it was just like my mind just expanded on the opportunities.
Yeah, nice. Did you grow up in a hunting family at all, or?
No, I really just grew up with my mom and I. Had a couple father figures in my life, but I didn't really start hunting until the later years of high school. And it was all small game. squirrels, rabbits. I went hunting for whitetails a couple of times. Didn't see anything. Saw some turkeys, of course. You go hunting for deer and you see turkeys, and you go hunting for turkeys and you see deer. So just that kind of stuff.
Nice.
So what initially got you interested in fly fishing?
Well, before I moved up to Alaska, my dad had sent me a fly rod because, of course, you can't really come to Alaska without fly fishing or knowing how to fly fish. So he sent me a rod. It was a 6-weight G Loomis Pro 4X, and I learned to fly fish there, just basically all on my own. There was a little stream in the town that I was living in called the South River, and it was stocked with rainbows. And I think it had wild brown trout in there too, or it was stocked with browns, one or the other. And it had smallmouth in it too. So I actually started fly fishing woolly buggers for smallmouth, and I figured that out. And then when I came up to Alaska, I had like the bare minimum of technique and everything needed just to kind of get started.
Nice.
Heck yeah.
So like right now, I still consider myself a generally like new person to fly fishing, which is crazy to think about. But there's just so much in this world of fly fishing that we know or we don't know, and it's just so kind of location dependent. It's crazy. I'm still learning every day.
Heck yeah. Keaton and I are the same way. I mean, we've been doing it, and I don't think anybody ever really knows everything about fly fishing. I think it's always a learning experience.
For sure.
Especially trout. Like trout are such a finicky thing. Like you think you got it right all one day, and the next day you go out and they went from sunny to cloudy, and there's a slight change or something, and you're using the same stuff and you think it will be working and it doesn't. So it's crazy, and you learn stuff. I learn stuff every trip I go out still, even if I'm fishing or not fishing, I still learn something.
Yeah. And it's good to hear too from you, Jordan, that as a fellow guide, somebody who works in the industry, like knowing, or you saying that that you don't know everything. And I think that's important for people to know, for people who actually do it as a job, make a living off of it. Or even if you're just doing it seasonally as a guide, like we don't know everything, and we're always still learning, just like the people that we take out.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the truth.
I think too, when people start getting into the fishing industry, they feel like there's all this information. They got to know everything about it in order to be a successful fisherman. And that's not the case, and just like Kyle said, as a guides, I feel like a lot of people come out and they're like, you should know everything about it. But, we know techniques and we know how to catch fish, but we don't know everything about the fish. Like we're still figuring that out. And so I think just for like newer people listening, you don't have to know everything. Just know a little bit about what you can and go from there and build off, and you'll learn as you go.
For sure. I've been driving to Homer this past couple of months back and forth, and I found myself listening to this podcast, of course, and the Milhouse Podcast, where Andy's just talking to all those old timers, and so many of those guys saying when they were guiding, they would always go to a new spot just to keep learning.
Yeah.
Always just take their clients to a new spot. They wouldn't always tell them it was a new spot, but just the drive to continue to figure it out and just kind of make that worthwhile.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. What was that one called? The Milhouse Podcast?
Yeah.
Huh,
Andy Milhouse and his son Nicky Milhouse. They're kind of saltwater guys in the Keys, and they've done some hunting and mainly just kind of interviewing the old timers before they kind of get phased out of the industry, and all their stories and all the things that they have taught just kind of go away with that.
That's cool. Yeah, we'll have to check that one out. It sounds like a good one to listen to.
Definitely recommend it.
So what originally brought you to Alaska? Like what made you move up here?
Yeah, that's a good question. I just finished my first year of college in Virginia. It was all right. I was just kind of doing the bare minimum as a business administration major, and then My dad got stationed here at Joint Base in Dorf Richardson a couple years prior to me finishing my first year of college. And then I was just like, my dad lives in Alaska. I've never lived with him before. This would be my first opportunity to. So I was like, heck, let's do it. So I called him one day I think it was in January, like on my way home from classes, because I was just a commuter student. I was like, hey, Dad, I'm moving to Alaska this summer. He's like, perfect. I'll gladly accept you. So that's kind of what spurred it. I had no intent to like fish or be a guide or anything. And it was just kind of that all just kind of worked into the story. But I was just tired of Virginia. It got old after a while.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I've heard.
But looking back, go ahead.
Oh, I've had some friends that moved from like the small towns and Vermont, Virginia, and stuff. And they're like, it's cool for like a couple years, and then after that, it just kind of seems like the small town vibes just get to you, and you just need to go explore a little bit.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I honestly am starting to feel that way in Alaska too. Alaska's it's so big, but the population and where everybody gets so small, where it's like I'm just in another small town.
Yeah.
100%.
But looking back at Virginia now, I had an amazing brook trout fishery like right next door, at 10 minutes away. And I fished it once when I've gone back in Thanksgiving. And that's one thing that I wish I would have utilized more, is just like the small creek brook trout fishery stuff.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because you catch yourself like, I was gear fishing, kind of same story like growing up, and now I'm into fly fishing, and I'm like, damn, like as a kid I missed all these opportunities to go and fish these great fisheries when they're like in their prime, and I had no idea. I had no one in my life to teach me to fly fish, or to I had people teaching me to gear fish and stuff, but we only fish certain fisheries. Like they're like, oh, this is where we're going today, and I was like, okay, let's go. But I wish I had that like drive, and I was able to go do things when they're in their prime.
Oh, for sure. There was this when my dad was stationed at Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri. There's this river that runs through base called the Big or Little Piney and Big Piney River, and we fished it on it with a canoe. The outdoor wreck, they'd haul you up, and you'd float down all day, and then you'd take out. And we fished it with just like topwater Zoom frogs, like the horny toads. And I was like, man, I'd love to get a fly rod in there right now.
Heck yeah. It's all those things. Sometimes it takes moving away to realize what you missed back home.
Yeah.
Of course.
So you kind of mentioned you did a little bit of fly fishing like back home, and then you moved up to Alaska. Like, did you just like head straight into guiding, or did you try did you try out some rivers? Did you start trying to figure stuff out and then just found your way into guiding? Can you kind of explain about that a little bit more?
Yeah, definitely. So part of my dad's kind of retirement plan was he was a fishing guide. That is what he kind of did his last year in the Army, and then he made a full-time job out of it his last like 5 years in Anchorage before he moved. And so I got here. He, first thing I did when I landed, went to the tail race, fished for kings. Didn't catch nothing per usual, but I hit the ground running with him on everything like Alaskan. So tail race for kings, Ship Creek for silvers, like Montana Creek for chums or whatever. And so I ended up he was not necessarily, I wouldn't say overbooked, but booked so much where he needed other guides. So he outcontracted to me, just being his son, like he could trust me. And so I did a couple Ship Creek trips for silvers, limited out with those, and that was a blast. And then I did a couple Montana Creek trips, and that was kind of like my intro to guiding. And they were all gear. None of them were fly fishing.
Yeah.
I fly fished along the way. So, before I did the Montana Creek trip, I went with my little brother, and we brought our fly rods, and we just tore up the chum in there. I mean, it was so fun. Just like, I don't know, a quarter mile above the mouth, and it was a blast. And then so like the more you do that, the more I kind of got out there with a fly rod, the more I learned. And then let's see. did a couple lake trips, just hanging out with my dad, and I'd bring the fly rod with me because pike on a fly rod are awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some people kind of disagree and say they're kind of dumb, but I mean that first 15, 20 seconds, you can't beat that. And then I did the Russian River once that fall. And it was actually right after it blew out. So we didn't catch anything. There were no salmon at all, and probably like the 1st of October. And so like after that summer, like my first summer in Alaska, I fly fished a handful of times. I knew the basic knots and the basic flies. I knew nothing about bugs, nymph, striped flies, nothing, absolutely nothing. But like Alaska fishing, meat fishing, beads, flesh,
Mm-hmm.
streamers, and I was like, you know what? Why can't I just guide in Bristol Bay? Like I want that adventure. I wanted to really experience Alaska. Anchorage and like the Matsu Valley were all right, but if I was gonna do it, I really wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And so knowing I had zero experience, I just blast out a bunch of emails. Everybody got an email. With the same like I copy and pasted the same paragraph with a resume, just changed the name of the lodge or the outfitter and just sent them out. Looking back, a little tip, I recommend people call instead of email because I've called around this season looking just for summer jobs, and so many of those people are talking to me now that I'm calling them. So I wish I would have done that. But out of, we'll say, like 40 emails, I got 5 replies. And I wasn't even looking to guide. I was just looking to, just get on with a lodge as like an assistant guide, thinking that these lodges had assistant guides, which they really don't.
Yeah.
And then those handful of lodges wanted me to come out with them. And they were all kind of like entry level lodges, like Alagnac, the one that I think his name was Jared the last couple of weeks. The one that he worked at got back to me. The lodge that I ended up working with called Fish and Bear Lodge, they got back to me. And it was all required on, do you have your captain's license? And I was like, heck no, I don't have my captain's license. I didn't even know I needed that. And so Justin, my boss at Fishing Bear, he was like, listen, if you get your captain's license, I'll bring you on. I was like, all right, deal. And since he was the first one to contact me back, I had to like give him my word just because I've kind of always honored that first come, first serve deal. So I got my captain's license, did the class in Anchorage. I got my restricted one, so I can't guide anywhere else. That was quite an interesting ordeal between the OUPV and the ROUPV. And then first summer with him, I guided with him for 4 years, minus the COVID year, so 3 full years, but I still went out there the COVID year. And yeah, that was my entry into guiding and fly fishing.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Real quick, can you explain what the restricted Coast Guard license is versus the other one?
Yeah, so now I did this 4 years ago, so my knowledge could possibly be wrong, but the way it was explained to me in the class I took was in order for myself to be able to guide somewhere, I needed so many hours on that body of water. I think I'm pretty sure it's how, kind of like with like airplanes, like if somebody's going to fly an F-22, they need hours in a T-38 before they can go to an F-22. And so knowing that a lot of people wanted to work out there but didn't have the hours in that location, the Coast Guard allowed them to still have hours on a navigable body of water without being in the area.
Gotcha.
But being the restricted, you're only restricted to guide in that area on a boat. And it's not necessarily guiding on a boat, it's having people for hire on a vessel. So just driving them around basically.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So I had a lady contact me to do a water taxi job out of Homer for this summer, and I told her that my captain's license wouldn't allow me to do that. I'd have to upgrade it to 25 ton or whatever. But yeah.
Gotcha.
And it was funny when I was in that class, there was a film crew, or I don't know, there was like some guys wanting to do a film in some remote river in Western Alaska, and they kept fighting the professor on like, why do I gotta how am I going to get hours on a river that I've never been on in order to do a commercial shoot on? Yeah, it was funny. Very interesting class.
Oh,
Yeah.
dang. So just to do anything like commercial, you had to have, if it was using like a motor or something, it had to be, or is it
Yeah.
navigable?
Yeah, I don't know if they were having like a TV personality on the shoot or on whatever they were doing. But yeah, it kind of got hairy and he didn't really have the answer, so he didn't really satisfy their questions.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's a crazy process.
So cool. So you got that. You went out there and you guided for him for 4 years, minus the COVID year. And what was that like? Like flying out there, and then were you just like thrown to the wolves? Like, here's your boat, here you go, here's some clients. What did that look like?
Kyle, man, it was unreal. It was unreal. Having never experienced rural Alaska, having never experienced anything like that, man, I still can't believe that even happened and it even worked out. So, my boss, let's see, he had the lodge since the like early 90s. So he's one of like the older guys in the region. And so the lodge is in the Wood-Tikchik State Park. So if you kind of picture Bristol Bay in your mind, there's the King Salmon and the Dillingham side. So we're out of Dillingham, 45 miles northwest of Dillingham in those lakes. And yeah, I got there. Before I got out there, I was like, Justin, I want to do it. I want to be out there when you open up. I want to be there for the entire season because I was planning to take the fall semester off. So if I was going to do it, I was going to do it all. And so I met him in Dillingham. Took the Raven flight out there, which this is my first Raven flight actually. And so I go to kind of get my ticket. I go through security. I'm looking around the gates, and I don't see the gate for the Raven flights. And I talked to one of the TSA ladies, and he was like, "Oh no, honey, you got to go back out of security downstairs in the basement, and then that's the Raven spot." And I had asked her, I was like, "Well, you said I don't need to go through security to get on this plane that I'm about to go 300 miles west on?" And she was like, "Exactly. Yep, no security." And I was like, "Okay, we're starting this process with a bang." And so got there, got to Dillingham. We ran around a lot and with some errands. And then I had met Justin's son Connor at the airport, did some stuff. And then we took an air taxi to the lodge to open up. And this is the business that we used to fly our clients out every week. So we had a good business deal with them. And so they flew us out. I was sitting in the back of the Cessna 185 on floats, and it was my first small plane flight, my first float plane flight. I mean, I'm pretty like I got a strong stomach, but it was a hot, clear day, and I mean just the air was super unsteady. I was getting thrown around back there, and I was taking pictures. I bought a camera that winter, and I was getting to learn it, and I still have some of the pictures that I remember, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. I can't believe I'm really out here. Then I land, and I love Connor to death. Absolutely love him to death. But the man works, and he works hard, and he doesn't stop working. So we landed, and it was like he flipped the switch, and we're taking cabins down, or we're taking the boards off the windows. We're opening everything up, and I mean, we'll say we got there at like 2 o'clock. We didn't stop working until like 11, and it was like that the rest of the summer.
Dang.
Go, 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 go.
Yeah, there's no rest.
Yeah.
And looking back, as the years went on, so the guide crew that year, it was myself, another rookie guide named Cole, and who's now my best friend, and then a returning guide named Joey, and then Justin was guiding as well. Connor commercial fish, so he just kind of opened up the family lodge, and then he was leaving fish out of Dillingham, and it was nice to have that shared experience with Cole, being our first years together. We didn't know nothing together, and so like we kind of really struggled, and we had some wins, we had some losses, and looking back now, like if we were to go out there, we can open that camp up ourselves at this point. We can get it done in a couple of days, and yeah, it's crazy what the things now versus before you're doing it.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
So when you're going out to open that cabin, like that cabin hasn't probably seen people in a few months, right?
Yeah, we close up about the first week of October, ideally. Sometimes there might be a bear hunt still around, so they'll close up middle of October.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you're going through the entire November all the way till May, end of May, without seeing anybody. I think he had a caretaker a couple of times, but you get a couple of bad caretakers, and then that just leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah. So when you're like opening up, is there like, do they try to leave a little time frame so that you can kind of repair stuff if needed and get things going again? Or was it like, okay, we have 3 to 4 days to open this up, get everything going, and our clients are coming right in?
Great question. The things that like nobody tells you. So we opened up pretty later than everybody else. So some of the other lodges in the area, like Tick Chick Narrows, Bristol Bay, Royal Coachman, Mission, they're all opening up right around the trout opener, which I think's in like the 14th of June or something like that. But we didn't open up and we didn't have clients until like the 4th of July weekend.
Wow.
So, I mean, like you think about it, you're missing out on like, let's see, 2.5, 3 weeks of tip money because
Yeah.
you're just opening up. And so we would do a lot of projects when we opened up. So like kind of the process goes, you get the cabins opened up, get the water pump going, clean the water tank, clean out the main cabin, get the wood stove in, and just kind of do projects since then. And it can be done at a leisurely pace, and we can get everything done and have clients ready, or we can really knock it out and go hard for a week and then have that next week to relax.
Yeah.
But it was kind of based on bookings too. When I had just got there, we weren't fully booked yet. But when I like last year in the 2020 COVID year, we were 100%. And so that caused us to be 100% last year and then some. And so after seeing the lodge kind of progress to more of a 100% booked rate, we now open up a much earlier, which is nice for pay wise. But even like my first couple of years, we'd open up, we'd work till, I don't know, 6, eat dinner, then the guys would just fish for the rest of the evening.
Yeah. That's nice. Did you guys have a lot of bears near you up there, or?
Yeah, I'd say there's a lot. They're not like Katmai bears where they're like always around and they're just like in daylight, or like they're not bears like when you're flowing down any of those like creeks on that side of Bristol Bay where like you'll see all these videos and pictures of the bears in broad daylight.
Yeah.
Our bears always come out at dusk or at night and they just kind of wander around. A lot of times when we get into camp and we open up, we'll have more bear activity then because they're smelling us. They're smelling everything. They're smelling something that they're not used to being in their area. So they're coming to check us out. And then by the time clients come in, we don't really see any bears at camp.
Of course.
In camp, to continue to paint that picture, it's like, you got a main lodge, which is, I don't know, like a 20 by 20 room with a kitchen and then a dining room to the side that fits 14 people, pretty not cramped, but everybody's kind of comfy. We're really intimate and really close to each other.
Yeah.
And then the guests stay in 2-people cabins, kind of along the riverside right next to there. And then guides sleep in what are called weather ports, which are kind of like industrial tents, like frame tents. They got doors or windows and whatever. And we have client showers. We have a client bathrooms with 3 toilets and all running water from the water tank. And then the guides use an outhouse.
Nice. That was very well described.
Well, I've had to explain this to so many family members because I didn't really like grow up in a super outdoorsy family. So my entire family doesn't believe what I'm doing. And my mom, she's always scared shitless that I'm going to get eaten by a bear or whatever. So, it's good to paint the picture for these people so at least my family can kind of understand it because I don't know if I'll ever get them to come out there. So
Yeah.
gotta be descriptive about it.
Gotta get yourself some pictures to take to them.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Heck yeah. So what was it like? Like, this is your first year, your first set of clients come in. What does that whole process look like of like learning how to be a host, be a guide, like be the entertainment? What did that look like?
Oh goodness. I wouldn't say I was a joke, but I was really green. Let's see. Day two. Now it's still dispute on what happened, but I go and launch and my fuel pumps broke. Now, whether it happened the day before when I brought the boat back or whatever, but on the Yamaha outboard jets, the way they designed the cowling in like the early 2000s or the mid like 2010 time, where like the latch on the cowling where it locked from the actual outboard was right in front of the fuel pump hoses. So if you kind of rip the cowling off at a kind of a weird angle, that hook would catch the fuel lines and rip them all off. Because the fuel pump, it was just a piece of plastic, and the plastic nipples would be connected to the hoses, and you just rip them all off. So I did that apparently. Don't really remember when, but day two experienced that. And the first several weeks, I was always going somewhere with someone.
Yeah.
Very rarely during that weeks did we have 8 guests of all twosomes. There was always like a foursome or a group of 6 or a group of 3, and I'd always like be the buddy. Cole and I kind of took turns. So like once when I went somewhere with somebody, either Joey or Justin, I could go there by myself. Now granted, where we are, it's it's like a chain of lakes and they're all interconnected somehow. And if you envision like 11 lakes, long lakes going from west to east, the bottom 5 flow south and the upper ones just flow north and then east and then south. But we're on the, let's see, we're on the 3rd lake of 4. And so the river between the 3rd and the 4th lake, it's pretty hairy. There's actually 2 rivers. There's a small lake in between that connects them. But you got to learn the channel, and you only learn the channel by following somebody in the channel. And so the more you kind of do that and you get those reps, the better off that I was in the long run. So then I could go up there by myself and I'd have somebody have to follow anybody up there. And then we did fishing on the 3rd lake too. There's all kinds of stuff. There's a whole bunch of creeks that come in, so the grayling kind of flow in those creeks, and we'll hike up and catch grayling or look for pike in the weed beds or go down to the outflow of that lake, which is one of the just kind of all around best trout rivers. I would argue if you're looking just for numbers and quality of fish, it's a really great river. You're not going to catch a 32-inch or a 36-inch trout in there like you would on the Naknek, but people that come to us don't really want that. They want more of an experience. So yeah, new guide, you're following people around until like, I don't know, week 4 or week 5, then I was able to kind of go on my own. And now Cole and I basically just choose what the guys or like what everybody's doing. We got to a point where we don't even need the boss. We can manage ourselves and where we're going and where we're taking people. So there's definitely a lot of learning.
Heck yeah. Oh, definitely sounds familiar. I think that's how a lot of people, a lot of young guys get their start is you gotta go with somebody who knows what they're doing, where they're going, and then just kind of branching off from that, learn how to do it yourself.
So yeah, and go ahead, Keaton.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead. Continue.
Okay. So yeah, Justin was a great teacher. He was a very old school man. So all this new high-tech flies and spay fishing, he didn't know nothing about. He still fishes with flies that he bought 10, 12, 15 years ago. But I mean, it didn't matter because they worked. And then Joey, on the other hand, that veteran guide, he didn't share nothing with me or Cole, really. And so, he was a stickler on. He spent, the past 10 years here. He's fishing his spots, and we'll just have to learn it on our own, and which we did. But even like somebody giving you those little like hints, like, hey, maybe check out the Boulder Field or check out B's Corner, or any of these spots, like just fish it, figure it out on your own. But I'm gonna kind of guide you in that area. We didn't really have a lot of guiding in areas. It was more so we figured it out on our own, and by the end of that year, we had really figured it out. And so then our following year, we were stoked. We were so excited because we were going everywhere on our own, didn't have to follow anybody, which was a blast.
Yeah. So I got a question because I haven't had any of like this hands-on in a jet boat in Alaska, but and I don't know if you've had this happen to you, but have you ever like broke down like when your motors stops working when you're out of remote Alaska? Like what do? Do you guys have radios? Like, is there ways to like help you get back? I mean, if you're on your own with clients and your boat breaks down, that's got to be a little like nerve-wracking.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And so my first year, so the lodge, they won't give us radios. Just, we're in such a mountainous range.
Yeah.
And, I could be going 40 minutes east down the lake where I could, use a radio. But, there might not be somebody at camp. There like the cook might be at camp, but he doesn't have a way to get to Justin because Justin was guiding too. Or I might go 40 minutes north through the mountains, and there's no way a radio is going to get through there once I'm on the other side. So my first year was really kind of wide, like crap. This is a big deal. I didn't have a first aid kit with me. I just had some flares and like the Coast Guard like required stuff, a whistle and some flares and whatnot. And thankfully nothing bad ever happened to like majorly bad. There was this one time I was on a creek up on the upper lake fishing, and I had followed a guy up there, and he had gone higher up on the creek than I was. And so we would kind of like tag team this creek. He'd fish the upper half, I'd fish the lower half. And I had got to this creek, and for the most part, it's wadable. But there was this one section where I wanted to be on the other side, and the only way for me to get there was to throw the clients in the boat, start the boat, putz over to the other side, and cut the engine and drop them off. And this creek, to describe it, it's kind of a gravel creek. It always changes every year with the gravel bars. It's gin clear. All the water is just crystal clear up there. And so I get them in the boat, pull it, start it, putz over to the other side, kill the motor before I suck up gravel. And then I go to lift up the cowling, and the latch breaks. That hook rips all the fuel lines out. So now I'm just stuck there. And I was like, well, thankfully I got Joey above me, so he'll see us when we come down. This is exactly what you were talking about. I had no way to let him know I was broke down. So I was like, all right, guys, Joey's going to come down at the end of the day. It was like, I don't know, 10 o'clock. So we just fished our way down, floated the boat down. We walked the rest of the way, and they had a fun time, caught a bunch of fish. And then when I hear Joey start to come down, I pull the cowling off, make sure that he knows I'm not going anywhere and that I'm broke down. He got there and picked up the clients, which was kind of questionable going down the next rivers to camp, because there's a big weight difference between having 2 people in the boat or having 4 people in the boat. But he took the other 2 clients. They were 2 tall and skinny guys, so it didn't really matter. And then I sat there with the boat for 2 hours. And then my boss came and got me. And you ask him or you ask Cole this story, but I was bored. I wasn't freezing. I was like, well, let me start a fire. Let's see if I can really start a fire if I needed to. So I think I had a lighter with me, and so I took some fuel. I collected some sticks, and I started a fire that was about the size of a coffee mug. And at that time, Justin came, and he saw the smoke from my little fire, and at that moment, he started making fun of me. He was like, dang, that's the fire you're going to build if you're going to try and stay warm. And that story got told as soon as we got back to camp, and Cole never lets me live that moment down.
That's so cool.
But yeah, like if Joey wasn't above me on that creek, they would have had to come and find me. And thankfully, like before we leave camp, we tell somebody where we're going. So whether that's the cook or the boss, if he stays back that day, you know, like I'm going here, Cole's going to the pack. Brendan's gonna hop around the lake. You know, we have a time to be back by, but if the fishing's good, we have a leeway time of about an hour. And after that, then they leave and come get you. So thankfully, I've never had to be gotten, but Cole's been broke down a couple of times where we've had to come and find him. But yeah, so then after that first year, I bought an inReach. I had to have something.
Yeah.
So I bought an inReach. My boss has one. He lives off it in the summertime, honestly. And then all the hunting guides, he makes the hunting guides have them. So I bought an inReach, kept in contact with him, which it turned out to be really helpful.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Yeah. inReaches, like if I had to have like one thing I made sure I had with me every time I left the house was my inReach. Like that's that is your literally how you communicate with the rest of the world. Like if something goes down, that's your only line of defense, really.
Yeah, whenever I drive to Homer, I always bring it just to go over turning and pass, you know, because it's like you never know what could happen. And it's always good to just be able to tell somebody what's happening when you can't.
Yeah. They can get someone out to you if you, like something happened, especially like if you're out, you know, on your own with clients, or you're out hunting on your own, or you're out with, you know, maybe it's just you and like a friend out hiking. I mean, it's just good to know there's all these stories that you think, you know, you go, oh, I've rode this water 100 times, or, oh, I've hiked this ridge like 20 times, you know, but weather or something happens, or they change a trail, and next thing you know, you don't know where you're at. So that I need to get one too. I'll be honest, I haven't got it yet. Kyle's been telling me to get one.
Heck yeah.
Definitely got to. I got my girlfriend one for Christmas because she bought a skiff and she'll rip it around, catch Mac Bay, and I was like, girl, you got to get one of these. If not for your peace of mind, for my peace of mind.
Yeah.
And you know, her family has one, and yeah, they're a lifesaver because you never know what could happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. Okay, so let's start moving this way. So you're starting to finish up the end of your season, and then were you like, okay, I guided, and then you're like getting ready to go home, and your boss is like, hey, you want to become a moose packer, or how did that all happen?
Oh, I wouldn't say that was not kept under the rug for me. From my experience was I was signing up to work the entire season, opening to closing. What that entailed was being a fly fishing guide July, August, being a moose packer September, and then we fished 2 more weeks of fly fishing at the end of September. So I knew exactly what I was getting into when I got on there, and granted, kind of off topic, but I'll come back to it. There was no packing list. I didn't know what to bring out there. I brought a sleeping bag that definitely was not warm enough. A whole bunch of cotton clothes. Didn't know how to layer properly, and then with like moose packing, like I don't know what to expect. I ain't never seen a moose before. So September 1st rolls by. We've had some great weather, and the fly fishing guides role at this camp. It's a great way to get your foot in the door as a hunting guide because you need a handful of summers or seasons packing for somebody before you can apply for your assistant guide license. And there's a whole other step to get you registered guide. But yeah, first 2 weeks of September, we packed moose. It's crazy. They harvest moose in the most beautiful of locations, and I'm just grateful I got to experience something like that. I only did it one summer, one season just because I was a full-time college student and my program wouldn't let me take the fall semester off continuously. But yeah, there was one time there was a moose shot. We had to fly it out, and so I got flown up, packed the moose to the lake, and then got flown back to the lodge. And then Cole did some more packing trips, so he got the short straw on that one. Another time we had to hike in an inflatable kayak to a spot, pack a moose to the creek, and then float the entire moose on this inflatable kayak. And I mean, I'm not talking like your Walmart Sun Dolphin kayak. I mean, this was like a industrial like inflatable kayak, and then we floated it out. Let's see what else. Boated a couple out. Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. It was a hell of an experience. I had never skinned a big game animal. So being in that, and by the time we got there, they had already kind of corded it up, and my job was just to get there, was just start packing.
Yeah.
But a couple times we got there, and the process hadn't got started yet, so I was able to be part of it. And the one that we had to float out with the kayak, the guide, his name was Troy. Troy was a great guy too. And so we got there. They had skinned the moose, and we were cutting the ribs off. And we got there. We didn't get there a little late. The hunter and the hunting guide notified us a little late. So by the time we got there, the animal was a little bloated just because it was sitting in the sun for an hour or so.
Yeah.
And so here's my job. All right, here, take this saw and just start cutting the ribs open. I didn't know any better, so I go hardcore, just straight in there, and I get that first rib going. I get that second rib, and then pop, the stomach, it basically exploded all over me. Grass and like just all this crap just like sprayed on my shirt, and they were on their knees laughing because like they kind of knew it was going to happen. But I didn't know it was going to happen. And so that was an experience. All in all, I know what to do now.
Give it to the other rookie.
Yep, give it to the other rookie.
Was it like did the guy make a good shot placement on it, or did he like hit it in the gut?
No, it wasn't gut shot. It was just
when you're sawing it, you just nick the gut.
Yeah. And I don't even think it was the gut. It was more the actual stomach itself.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like a whole bunch of like moose shit that came flying on me. It was actual like grass and leaves and shrubs and whatnot.
That's crazy.
So were you ever there like during a hunt, or were you always just called in once something was shot?
Cole was older than I am. When I was doing this, I was only 20 years old my first year. So I was young. I mean, I was freshly in high school young. And so Cole was a little bit older than me just by a couple of years. And, he had a lot more hunting experience. So, they're, from a business standpoint, they're investing time into him more so than me because they can get a return on investment from Cole. Because, Cole can now guide hunts now because he's done all the packing, all that kind of stuff. And so if there was ever an opportunity, Cole was the one to go. So Cole was able to see a brown bear dropped, which I'm jealous of because the way he tells the story was a pretty cool experience. So yeah, I never got to go on the hunts. If I really pushed for it, I probably could have, but they leave at such godly hours in the day, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm good at camp. I'll make breakfast and send you guys off, but I'm gonna go back to bed.
Yeah.
So Joey, let me back up a little bit. Our cook for my first year was this college kid, great guy named Ben. He cooked and then he had to go back to school. So Joey was supposed to cook, but Joey ended up getting let go because he was an alcoholic. So then the day that Joey left camp, Justin looks at us and looks at Cole and I was like, you guys want to cook? Because Joe's leaving, so it's up to you to cook. And so we were like, sure. So we cooked during moose season. And so kind of what we would do is we'd wake up at the ass crack of dawn. I mean, it was dark out long before the sun was going to get up. make these guys breakfast, eggs and bacon, same thing for these hunting goons. And then depending on where they were going and what was happening, the hunting guides would leave with their clients. Cole and I would just hang back, go back to bed. And then if nobody shot a moose that day, we wouldn't really see anybody for the rest of the day. They'd either stay out there or the guys closer to camp would come back and eat lunch at camp and then go for the evening. But from what my experience was, is if it's going to happen, it's going to happen the first like 3 hours of daylight.
Yeah.
And we actually got onto a routine to where every other morning a moose was shot.
Oh, wow. That's very cool. So were they accessing to hunt the moose via boat, or was that, or how was that going on?
Both. Depending on the hunter's capabilities, because you would have thought everybody wanting to hunt moose would be physically able to do an Alaska moose hunt if you were to like imagine what kind of physical capabilities you would need there.
Yeah.
But that's actually wrong. Being that we were kind of one of the only moose hunting operations in Alaska out of a lodge and not like a straight out camp, being that some of the clients that they had were more of the physically unable. So sometimes they would take a boat to a spot, hike, I don't know, quarter of a mile. Sometimes they would hike more than that. Sometimes they would hike less than that. It kind of just depended on the hunter's capabilities.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But yeah, the boats were our main mode of transportation. Being in the state park, you can't land planes on the land or use ATVs or anything like that.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, were a lot of the moose shot down kind of by like lakes and stuff, or did you would like also you kind of say like a lot of them were from the boats, right? But like, what about, would you have clients come in that would want to like hike up in and like go up trails and like get the full experience?
Yeah, there were some spots that kind of required like an out camp for clients that wanted to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So then a guide would get flown up to a spot, and then a hunter would get flown up a couple of days later, and they'd hunt out of that spot, and that'd be like a more like in-depth kind of in the wilderness experience rather than just hunting out of the lodge.
Yeah. I bet those packs were fun.
Yeah. You know, it's 90 pounds for a front quarter and then 110 pounds for a back quarter, and then they try and throw on like an extra meat bag or ribs or whatever, and it gets heavy, man. I'm only like 6 foot, 150 pounds, so when you throw something on that's more than half my body weight, it takes me a while to get from one spot to the other.
Yeah. Well, you're not going to be, you're going to be climbing over stuff and following the trails back out, I bet. So it's like when you add that weight on, you're not going to be high legging it over branches and stuff.
No.
Time. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
What was your easiest pack out? Do you have any like really like super easy ones that like the guy like dropped it right by the lake and you just pretty much rolled up in a boat and threw it in, or were they all gnarly?
They were all, I mean, the easiest one was probably the one we had to float out with the kayak, but you know, the distance from the moose to the river was, I mean, 100 yards at most. So we wouldn't even bother with putting it in a pack. We would just kind of bear hug it and just kind of slide it down a hill onto the kayak. But we had to hike that kayak in there, which, I mean, it's not light by any means, but I mean, it's definitely not the size of a quarter.
Yeah. So like, you know, I've only seen television shows and stuff about it. And a lot of people are like, oh, right when you shoot a moose, like you got to make sure to do your process fast because it's kind of like a dinner bell for like predators and stuff. Was that the case near you, or is that like, how was that? Did you ever like feel like when you were packing, you have a piece of meat on your back that's, you know, did you ever feel like you were getting watched or like something you ever felt nervous, like hiking something out?
No, you know, as long as we were there, I don't think any bears would have messed with us. Now, if one of them, if they were to, and they've done this with bears. Reason I know it's a used technique, but if they drop an animal in the evening or dusk hours, they find it, they confirm that it has been harvested. One of them would just take their underwear off and just drop it on the bear like a shirt or something, so that the bear is going to smell it, but he's also going to smell the odor of a person, so then they're not going to be as inclined to mess with it. But generally, the moose that I packed out, they were always shot in the morning, so we had all day to get it hauled out of there. And I mean, it was a very relaxed area. The 9 times out of 10, the hunting clan would just be out there taking a nap, and we'd just be working away on this moose.
Yeah. So your clients, I mean, they pretty much all they really did when they came up on a trip is pretty much pulled the trigger, and you guys did pretty much the rest of it.
Yeah, most of them. Now there are some guys that are super gung ho and they're great. They want to be in it, skinning it with you and everything. But granted, I've only packed out 1, 2, 3, well maybe 4, with three moose, and the ones that I did, the client, out of one of the 3, the client helped us. So the rest that I'm talking about is more so hearing it from the guides and Cole.
Yeah.
But the fishing clients versus the hunting clients, 2 different demographics. I mean, completely different ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
How so?
Our fishing program is more tailored to. Now it was kind of described, it was described like this to us from the people who pick up our clients from the airport in Dillingham, which is the air taxi business. And when that Alaska jet arrives, there's the guys wearing jeans and a t-shirt standing on a case of Bud Light. And then there's the couple in tucked in button down shirts with I don't know, a Patagonia vest or Patagonia luggage, and they're a bit older, but a little bit more refined people. So the refined people would be our fishing clients, and then our hunting clients would just be anybody that could afford to do a $10,000 plus moose hunt. So it was generally business people, business guys.
Yeah.
And so generally the dudes that are in jeans and a t-shirt and with a case of beer, they're going to be the ones going to the meat lodges, to the ones that are doing kings or silvers. And where we were, the Nooshigak was right there, so they'd fly into Dillingham and fish the Noosh, and there's a lot of king camps on the Noosh.
Yeah. When you so you kind of mentioned that you guys did moose, and then you said later in the year you guys did bears. Did you ever get a chance to maybe hunt blacktail or any small game or a smaller game, or was it just you were there working?
Yeah, I was there working. I did a lot of fishing, but we didn't have blacktail that far inland,
Mm-hmm.
where we are. And so if I wanted to hunt anything, it'd be grouse. There was a shit pile of grouse. In the fall mornings, come the moose opener or whatever, you'd wake up and as the sun's coming out, there'd be 20 grouse on the beach just running around all throughout camp. And the boss had set a strict rule of no shooting the grouse in camp. If you ever did want to shoot a grouse, you had to go kind of around the point a little bit down from camp. And so I could have done that if I wanted to.
Yeah.
I was too busy wanting to fish.
Yeah. So you said there's no deer. What were your animals up there? Because I'm down here. I don't really know a lot about Alaska. There's probably other people that are wondering the same thing. Moose, bear, is that kind of the bread and butter there?
So a long time ago, I think in the 70s and the 80s and early 90s, there was a really large caribou herd on the upper lakes in the Wood-Tikchik system. But a while ago, those caribou died off because they got, I think it was called hoofing disease. So that entire herd died off, and there's not many up there now. Every once in a while, you'll see a caribou pass through where we are, because we're a bit lower on the chain of lakes, and so you'll see a couple caribou transiting through. I don't think there's a season for them, but there might be for residents. I don't know, but we never targeted the caribou because we only see like one a summer, and it was in the middle of July. Moose, brown bears, black bears. That's basically it for the big game, and you'd see like a wolverine a summer.
That's cool.
You'd see a wolf prints. No actual sightings of a wolf, but you'd see some wolf prints. A lot of beavers, and then just kind of like your general Alaska small game type stuff.
Gotcha. What did it? So you do fishing in the summer, and then you had the moose season, and then you said you go back to fishing again after that.
Yeah, the last 2 weeks of September are arguably the best times to fish if you want big, hot trout. They spend all of the summer and August and the beginning of September eating protein, eating eggs, eating flesh. So, that's going to be the biggest, that's going to be the 25-incher with huge shoulders and like 14 inches of girth and just going to be like this monster fish. So that's fun. And it's all spinning streamers basically and rice fishing too. No real big dry fly fishing. But what sucks about those is just you don't got as much daylight. You're really starting to get low on daylight. The sun is at such an interesting angle where you always think it's the afternoon. But yeah, it's those are the 2 coldest weeks of the year generally, and that's for the kind of the hardcore fishermen. But the guys that can really pound it out and get after the reward is definitely out there.
Heck yeah. So what's a big fish then for your system that time of year? Like a big trout.
This past summer, the biggest fish that we caught was actually in the first week of the year, and it was 28.5 inches.
Nice. That's a big fish.
That's probably a 28.5 trout there is probably equivalent to like a 35-inch trout on the neck.
Wow.
It's just like you don't really come by. You come by a lot of 25s, a lot of 26s, 27 here and there. But when you get to like the 28, 29-inch range, it's unreal. So that was biggest for trout. Every week we'll catch, 1 to 3 20-inch grayling. Char fishing wise, more so in the beginning of the year. Char fishing is really good because they're eating the smolt as they're coming off of the rivers into the lakes, and that can get really fun. I caught an absolute toad of a char my second year out there, which I didn't measure or anything. Actually, no, I didn't measure it, but I mean, it was fat. It was so big. And then the char kind of disappeared for the main part of the summer, and then when the salmon start dropping eggs, they will come back into the creeks and be available to fish. And then, but a big one for that's going to be the same, like 28, 32, 35-inch range. And then pike, we've earlier in the season, a big pike in our area is going to be mid to high 40s. We have some spots where we can consistently catch a couple of toads every week.
Nice. So what does that look like then? I know we were just kind of talking about fall as you're progressing, and you said that that's when you're fishing all your beads, your flesh patterns. What does that look like through the whole season? Like, what do you start fishing with for, say, the trout, the grayling, the char, and then what are you changing up as you go? And then what are you using for pike, and when does that season start?
Yeah, so, for the most part, pike spawn as soon as the ice breaks off the lakes, so mid-May-ish. And so from end of May to beginning of July, it's pike. Once when you get to like actual July and August, the big girls kind of go deeper and it's a little harder to catch them. So I always told clients, our fishing season can be divided into thirds. The first third will be when we open, which in last year's case was mid-June, all the way through about July. Then August will be its own third, and then the last third will be September. So in this first third, it's mainly the larger rivers that are fishing and pike. So we're fishing main lakes. We're fishing the rivers between the lakes for trout and char at the mouth. The trout are still in the main rivers. They're still kind of transiting in between locations. And the pike are still in the flats. The grayling are not in the creeks yet because the creeks are a little too cold. And the lakes are still at a comfortable temperature for them. And trout fishing wise, it is dry flies 100% of the time. And it's unreal. It's so amazing. I knew nothing about dry flies, nothing about topwater bugs. And then you fish at a lodge like this that primarily uses dry flies for trout, and it's game changing. So one of the main rivers that we fish called the Agula Pack, which its short pronunciation is just the pack. And one cool thing about us is since we are able to drive a boat there, the fly out lodges in the area that fly to that river, they all leave at 4 o'clock on the dot. And nothing really has happened at 4 o'clock bug wise. There's some stuff, some caddises, some mayflies, but when you get to like 8, 9, 10 o'clock, I mean, it's crazy. You could be anchored up behind a rock and you can spend half an hour or hour and a half catching fish because you can just hear them rising all around you. And these are all like high teens, 20s, like 24-inch trout. So like they're all like pretty big trout for a dry fly. And you're not catching, as far as I know, and I could be wrong, but you're not catching those 30-inch trout on a dry fly. So for people who really love that kind of experience and love hunting fish and seeing it, that's an amazing way to do it. And we have the entire river to ourselves, which is unheard of in Alaska. You're always sharing it with somebody. So having that's been pretty special. So that's kind of the first third, right? So then we go into the middle third, which is arguably my absolute favorite. Now the grayling are in the creeks because the lakes are starting to warm up some. So you have a whole lot of like spock and stock grayling fishing, which is super fun. The pike's slowing down, but if you have a client that's like, I want to catch a pike as soon as they get off the plane, you're like, okay, cool, we can go hammer on some hammer handles and make your trip. And so then the salmon are starting to come into these creeks now, and we have about 3 or 4 creeks that we can kind of do like a nice rotation through where we can spot and stock trout. And I mean, that's just the most fun thing ever. I think Jared was talking about it, but you're now hunting trout, and it's a completely different area. You're walking up this creek with some clients, and you see a trout, and then you take Jimmy over here, who's the closest to you, and you make sure he sees the trout. So he's like, okay, yeah, I see it. I was like, all right, Jimmy, you're gonna have like one shot at this trout. You better lead him. Let me take your bobber off, and we're gonna watch the bead. So, and you better set the hook when you see that fish open up. You better set the hook, and if the lighting's right, he throws it above this fish. That bead's dribbling down, and we're in like shin deep water, knee deep water, casting to like knee to low thigh deep water. And you see that trout in his lane, and he comes out, eats that bead. Jimmy sets the hook, and it's just like game on. You could do that all day long, and it's like a drug. I'm addicted to that. So that month of August is just unreal with that. And so the creeks will spawn first, salmon wise, and then the main rivers will spawn. So it's kind of like we kind of honestly have it down to a system to where this creek's always the first to spawn this week, and then this creek goes off, and then that creek goes off, but you still can go to this creek, and then once when you're done cycling through those, then the pack spawning, and then after all that's said and done, then the lake salmon start to spawn. You can kind of like look for trout on the lake shore, and so then you got all August, and so kind of like I talked about September time frame. There's a lot of streamers. a lot of mouse. The trout are out of the creeks. The grayling are still in there though. There's like no pike to be found, and the trout are now in like the big rivers connecting the two. And then in the spring, a lot of mousing as well, which is not like Antioch River Lodge mousing where it's like you're in like this creek. We're in a little bit of a bigger river. Every once in a while, you'll be in the smaller creek and we'll fish beads, and then we'll mice fish on the way down. And you'll be surprised how many trout that you miss on a bead will take a mouse instead.
Nice. Heck yeah. That's a cool breakdown. And it's crazy. Like I feel like you don't hear a lot about like dry fly fishing for trout in Alaska, right? Like you think of dry fly fishing for trout in Alaska, you think of mice, but that's cool that you guys have like a dedicated like dry fly fishery for trout. That's pretty, since I've been here, that's pretty unheard of, I think.
Yeah, that's, the Gullipack River is just so special. It's just this kind of large, it's only like 1.5 miles, 2 miles long, large freestone river. It's not, it's deep in sections. It could be like 6 feet in some sections, but you got all this structure, all this boulder, all this bug life, and it's amazing. I have some crazy stories, but there was this one time this season where we were fishing a mayfly hatch up on a river above camp, and we could see this trout periodically rise. This trout rise different than grayling. If you watch enough of them, you can kind of tell the difference. And so we'd see this trout rise, but he wouldn't want this mayfly that we were throwing, so we kept throwing, and I'd try and change it up. But yeah, that mayfly was my confidence fly. I knew that one would work, so I'd try different when I'd tie it back down. I'd try different when I'd tie it back on. And it got to the point where he missed it. The angler, I think his name was like Mike. Mike threw it out there. Trout went to go grab it. Mike missed the hook set, and I was like, "Damn it, Mike! You had one chance, man." So I was like, "All right, we're gonna give that fish a rest. We're gonna fish the other side of the boat." So we fished the other side of the boat, and then we go back, same fly, and the fly lands the water, and it's like a fish ate it out of aggression. It wasn't like a delicate, this is a little snack, I'm going to eat it and then go back down. It was like, I'm tired of seeing the stupid little bug. I'm going to absolutely kill it with all my might. So it toilet bowled the fly. This huge splash off this take. And then he set the hook and the fish exploded. I was like, wow, I've never really seen a fish eat a fly like that off the top of the water. It was crazy.
That's super cool. Heck yeah.
And it's just so cool because, the grayling, they're so easy to catch on a dry fly. So you get people who are new to fly fishing. And generally, in the past, our clientele has kind of been 50%. They fish a handful of times of the year. 25%, they're like, they fished every day of their life. And then 25%, they've never touched a fly rod at all. So you get anybody new, let's go catch grayling. It's a great way to learn.
Heck yeah. Absolutely. So, Jordan, you've been talking to us about your guiding experience for fishing in moose camp. One of the things you mentioned when you first reached out to us is that you're deciding to leave the outdoor industry and you're starting to go into the military. Can you talk a little bit about why you stopped wanting to guide and why you took a new career path?
Yeah, for sure. So, growing up with just my mom and I had experienced her getting laid off my senior year of high school. And so she didn't really have a job for a while. And I don't know if that was kind of like the catalyst event, but after that, I always had the thought in the back of my mind of like needing a sense of security, of like making sure I had a retirement and making sure I had healthcare. And, I would guide every single day of my life if it had retirement and healthcare. But just knowing that, those are more expenses that I'd have to pay off, just kind of didn't give me the sense of stability that I had wanted to achieve. And so then I told myself, like, well, if you really love guiding, you're going to find your way doing it again. But in the meantime, experience what an actual like real life job is like with those benefits and with that way of life. If you're miserable, then you always can go back. You always can absolutely dedicate yourself to being a guide. So yeah, I am commissioning into the Air Force as an officer this spring. I've spent the past 3 years in ROTC here at UAA. I'm just kind of plugging my way towards being an officer and all that jazz. And so it'll definitely be an exciting career path. It'll be one where I can still enjoy fishing while also having a career. And that was another thing too. It was like, because back in the day, I played a lot of golf. I was on the golf team, and I was gonna pursue a career in golf management, or like get my PGA cert or license and be like like a teaching pro or whatever. And it was coming down to like just the hours. Golf pros always work holidays, always work weekends, and it's just like isn't kind of the way of life that I viewed for myself. And I can experience that. I can experience that hobby and not make it a career. So I did that with golf. I ended up doing that again with fishing. So I'll be an officer working in finance, just kind of doing a desk job, managing a group of people, a team. And hopefully one day I'll be on the other side of the fishing lodge and I'll be the client at Fishing Bear and I won't be the guide anymore.
There you go. That's
and I'll be that angry guide, or I'll be that angry client saying, well, back in my day, we fished it down here, so why aren't we fishing it this way?
Oh, yeah. Oh, we get so much of that, and we know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's crazy. I had this guy on my boat that fished with us for like 5 years ago. And he's like, well, Jordy, 5 years ago, we were down here in the pack catching them all kinds of trout. Why aren't we down there? And it was like a super low water year. And I was like, Jimbo, we can't go down there because we're not going to be able to get back up, dude. And you can't walk very far. So we're stuck up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know how that goes. But yeah, that's pretty cool how you saw that. Like you know that guiding doesn't have 401k, retirement, all this kind of stuff. Like doesn't have health insurance. It doesn't have this and that. So it's cool to see that you recognize that and that you realize like probably going to have to go do something else to kind of make it work,
Yeah. And I never knew what to expect getting paid. Never knew. Like nobody ever talks about it. Can't find any of that stuff on the internet, And so like I'll be honest with you guys. New guide working at a lodge that runs about $4,200 a week, and it's been like that for a solid couple, like a decade or so. So I mean, inflation's should have caused those rates to go up eventually.
Yeah.
And my first month, let's see, being new, didn't have clients. I think I made $1,500 my first month, and then he gave me a raise to $2,000 a month. And so I did that plus tips. And, my first year, like I said, we weren't fully booked at all. So I probably made like, I don't know, probably like $6,000 in tips. No, definitely not that much. Like a couple $1,000s in tips. And then my next year, I got a $500 pay increase. I was making $2,500 a month. That's probably still because I was new, or I didn't know how to negotiate and kind of didn't know how to work for myself and get what I deserved. But tips were a little better that year. And then COVID, I went out there. I just kind of spent a couple of weeks out there just doing some projects and was fishing for fun. And then last year, another pay increase, $3,000 a month. And then we had our best tip year ever that the lodge has ever seen last year. So I worked about 2.5 months and came out there with a healthy amount of change. But the crazy thing is, I called another lodge, a bigger lodge, a couple lakes down this season, just to kind of see, because there's still a possibility that I'll be in Bristol Bay this summer, but it's like 0.01%. So, and it would be with my girlfriend. So and she doesn't want to go to the lodge because she experienced part of it last year, and it's just kind of not the best fit for her. And he was telling me that he starts new guides out at $3,000. And I was like, wow, like that's unbelievable. That I could have been making so much more money if I had just kind of applied myself in college and asked around. But then again, that same lodge is charging clients $11,000 a week. So they got the money to spend.
Yeah.
And they're pushing 22, 28 guests through that lodge a week. And so you do the math and, they got some income that they need to spend on some expenses. And, you get a clientele that's paying $11,000 a week to go fishing. 15% of $11,000 is a whole lot different than 15% of $4,200.
Yeah.
Taking that into consideration too, I'm sure guys do make a living off of guiding, but it takes a lot of time at the right place. And just for me, my life, I was not at the right place in my life to do it. Turns out Cole, he's actually going to become the head guide or general manager. I think general manager would be his title because we don't use the term head guide. So like he'll be able to make a career out of that kind of a job now.
Yeah.
And I mean, good for him because that's something that I had a desire to do, but I just couldn't do it.
Yeah. It takes a lot of time and energy out of you. And then, from what I've heard with like Kyle and stuff is that when you're up there, you only get so much time in the year, and in that time frame, like you're going as hard as you can to make as many trips and as many, guide experiences as you can. And that's like your money, and not just for that time, but you also got to, stretch it out if that's your only way of income, which I don't think that it's possible to do that unless you're like owning or you're like, like you're saying, a head guide. So
yeah, the guides that are, they're working at these bigger lodges like the Alaska Sportsman's or District Narrows for 12, 15 years. Those are the guys that are making a significant amount of money, and they're able to either make that work for the entire winter, living pretty inexpensively, or, guiding somewhere else in the off season, really kind of riding it off. It's different for us because, like we get the monthly pay, but then, Kyle, I don't know if you're getting like just a chunk off your daily clients.
Yeah. Yep. That's what I'm doing. I get a percentage of every trip.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's, the tips are the large portion of our pay at the lodge, and I think at other lodges too. So just kind of different all around.
Yeah, no, totally. I agree. It's definitely hard to make that spread out over the year if that's your only line of work. Tips definitely help out. That definitely adds to your year, helps pay bills and buy gas and get stuff done. And yeah, just recognizing that you do. I think one thing that you brought up is knowing how much you're getting paid and maybe understanding your worth. Now you have experience, you're reaching out, you're talking to other lodges, you feel more comfortable talking to other people, you start to realize how much other places are paying. And that's something I've realized over several years, is talking to more people to understand maybe where you can get paid more, to maybe not make it your career, but the time that you're doing it, to get paid more. And so it's definitely something to look out for, and knowing your worth, knowing how much you should be getting paid for your experience. So
for sure. And this is something that I fought with myself so much about because a part of my calling around this year, the other lodge on the lake lower than us, he was going to start me off at $4,000 a month, and then the tips, as you can imagine, if they're charging 11,000 a week with 20 plus people, the tips are going to be almost double what I was normally making. And I mean, that's just like blew my mind when I heard those figures, and it's like, wow, that's just crazy. But then again, like you start to think at the clientele, those clients are going to be a whole lot different than the clients that are going to be paying $4,200 a week for a lodge. It's just like Yeah, because the ones that, and I honestly think if I had to do it, I wouldn't go to a larger lodge. I'd go back to the smaller one just because of the people. You get the people that saved up their entire life for this one trip. They appreciate it so much more, versus the guys that can just throw around that money and they don't really appreciate a whole lot.
Yeah.
And then another thing that at least the remote guides have at our advantage is, when we go MIA for a couple of months, I can not pay my car insurance. I can not pay like those other expenses that I would be paying if I were like working as just a summer job at a like retail store.
Yeah.
So that kind of really allowed me to look at it all in a larger perspective too.
Gotcha. No, I totally agree with what you're talking about, a different type of clientele. When I do a lot of my trips on the road system, some people it's like their dream Alaska trip, but a lot of people it's like, I'm in Alaska, I'm in Anchorage, I want to fish, and I want to go someplace I can access for the day. And the people going on those trips, they don't put that on a super high pedestal. That's like just something they're doing in Alaska. They're not dropping several $1,000s like the trip that I did in Western Alaska, out of like Bethel. And the people on that trip out west, they're dropping a lot more money. They're expecting more from that trip. They have higher expectations because they're putting that trip on a pedestal. And so just having to deal with that clientele versus somebody who's like, hey, we're in Alaska, we want to go fishing, me and the kids, and we just want to have a good time. Like those are the trips I really like you being in Bristol Bay, like me being out west, like those are super cool trips. But a lot of what makes the trips for me are the clients. And I would almost prefer to have somebody who's brand new, who has no expectations, who's like mom, dad, 2 kids, just want to get out and catch some fish and do that as like a day thing and never touched a fly rod, almost more than those people who are dropping several thousand, who have fished all around the world because they have expectations. And if it doesn't meet their expectations, which are a lot of times are way too high, they're not going to have as good a time. And it's going to make you as a guide not have as good a time, not have as good an experience.
Oh, for sure. You see it day by day, managing expectations. There's this one kid that as soon as he hopped off the float plane, this kid is like, I don't know, 14 years old, the classic teenager. What's the biggest trout I caught this year? I don't know. Well, I'm going to catch a bigger one. Let's go fishing now. It's like, no, you just got off the plane, dude. You got to unpack and no. So just kind of managing those expectations is definitely a real thing to do.
Yeah. For sure.
So we've been talking about fishing. I just want to kind of touch back on the military thing. What are you looking most forward to about like going on to the military, about an officer and stuff like that?
Honestly, getting out of Alaska.
Yeah.
So with my job, I was hoping to do finance in the Air Force, but I didn't get slotted for that. I was hoping to do intelligence in the Air Force. Didn't get picked for that, so I got finance. And so every Air Force base has a finance shop. So advantage is that like I had 67 bases to choose from to put on my preference list. So I put 8 places that I would want to go to, that they would hopefully put me in one of those 8 places of where I would want to go. I was like, well, now my fishing opportunities have just doubled of going to a new place.
Yeah.
So I put like Charleston, South Carolina on there. I put 2 bases in the Panhandle in Florida.
Nice.
So near like Pensacola and Destin. Mountain Home in Idaho. I put in for Fairchild in Eastern Washington.
Okay.
Yeah.
We might be seeing you down here.
Oh, for sure. And that's one thing I'm really, really looking forward to in the military, is being able to experience a new place that I now have this skill of fly fishing that I can apply elsewhere.
Yeah.
Granted, I'm going to be greener than green at a new place, but I'll still be able to kind of apply what I've learned here in Alaska and just kind of take advantage of it. So that is one of the benefits. Honestly, the pay. I was going to enlist right out of college. I was going to get my associates and then enlist, but then look at the pay chart, like a Department of Defense pay chart. I mean, you can see the benefits of just staying in college a little bit longer and getting the bachelor's degree. So that'll be nice. And then, just the benefits, the free healthcare, the retirement system they have now, even though it's not like it was back in the day. There's a lot of opportunity to understand whether I need this for 20 years and then I can just go guide for the rest of my life. Retirement begins at 20 years. So I'm 24 now. I commissioned this spring. I'd get out, we'll say 45. Hopefully I'll have a family at that point. Grand scheme of things, if the family happens on a kind of a general scale, everybody's off to college or close to being off to college at that point. So now I'm just kind of with the wife, and I'm old, just wanting to be a fishing guide.
Yeah. Well, you're not at that point where you're like, you're too old, you don't got to worry about your hip going out yet. So
yeah, for sure.
You're still young, a little bit young and spry, and you're retiring, and you can go you get your benefits for your lifetime benefits and all that. So that's awesome. Well, I'm glad, and I really hope it works out for you well.
Yeah, thank you. That's appreciated. It's definitely been an interesting experience so far.
Yeah, it's a big thing to serve your country. So we're definitely thankful. You can't go guiding. We can't do what we do unless we have people, protecting it. So
for sure.
Yeah, well, we look forward to seeing where that takes. So, like, where Keaton and I, where I used to guide in Washington, where Keaton guides Todd, our owner, that's how he got to the Yakimas. He did a couple tours, and he ended up being stationed at the base there outside of Ellensburg, and that's how he got into guiding and then into owning Ellensburg Anglers, because that's where the military took him, and fishing all around wherever he was stationed. And then coming back, like, he wanted to end up there and was able to use his experience like you and own a guide business. So it'll be cool to see where you go and you take that.
Oh, of course. Yeah, it'll be fun. Lord knows where I'll be in the next 10 years, but we'll be having fun doing something, I'm sure.
Heck yeah.
No one knows where they're going in the next 10 years. We're just here. You're trying to survive.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Well, awesome.
Right.
I think we're coming down. We're getting ready to kind of roll out of this. But, first we got a few of our last questions. We have our rapid fire round that we do with everyone at the end of our podcast. And then we'll end it with your favorite guide story. So we're looking forward to that. So Kyle, you want to kick us off?
Yeah. You ready for this, Jordan? Ready for the rapid fire questions?
Oh yeah, bring them on.
All right. So first question is, what is your favorite fish and what is your favorite thing to hunt?
Favorite fish has to be trout. I mean, plain and simple. I've been guiding at a trout primary lodge, so has to be my favorite fish. Now, if I go down to the lower 48, I probably won't fish for rainbows just because Alaska has completely saturated that idea for me. Favorite thing to hunt has to be ptarmigan. I've done some of that in the Taquitos, and that's been an absolute blast.
Nice.
Sorry,
1 second, Keaton. If you say your favorite fish is a trout, if you had to choose one way to catch the trout, what's your favorite way to catch them?
With a spay rod. With a spay rod, swing, and a streamer.
Nice.
Heck yeah. Tilga's the drug, baby.
Oh, yeah.
All right. What is your dream destination to go fishing?
Dream destination to go fishing has to be like Arctic National Wildlife Refuge for the Dolly Varden. Right now, that one is on top of my pedestal. I mean, just because it's in the middle of nowhere. I mean, those fish are absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
So that has to be the most attainable one right now.
If you get put in Washington, let me know. We can go fit. It won't be no Arctic. We can do some kind of urban, bull trout dollies. So.
Oh, of course.
All right. What is your favorite meal, and what's your favorite drink for when you're on in a day of fishing? Like you're going out in the boat. What are you putting in your lunch cooler?
Let's see. I always loved a good tuna wrap. A nice
Oh,
tuna wrap. That always gets me going. And then sometimes my boss will buy Skittles at Dillingham, and I'll take the massive like Costco size of Skittles and just throw them in my cooler. Everybody knows at camp that I eat all the candy, and that's just kind of what happens. So whether it's like it's the little chocolates or just the Skittles, a tuna wrap and that has to be the go-to.
Yeah. All right, this didn't really happen out when you're remote, but like let's say you're going fishing for fun, you're in your truck, you're rolling to the fishing spot. What is your go-to like tunes that you're listening to?
Honestly, this past summer it was some Shaky Graves.
Nice.
Yeah, roll the bones or some like any of those two, just like kind of upbeat.
Yeah.
That or if we'd like when we wash dishes, we listen to like Rainbow Kent Surprise or that kind of stuff too.
Yeah. Nice.
Gotcha. All right, you're headed out the door. You're going fishing. You're on your way to Homer. What's the first thing you're grabbing as you're headed out the door right now?
My inReach.
Yep. Heck yeah, I totally agree. That's my first thing.
Yeah, inReach or the Leatherman. Leatherman never leaves my side of the lodge. There's been countless times where I've forgotten my fishing stuff, like my actual like box of flies and everything, but I didn't forget the Leatherman.
Heck yeah.
All right. Something that you could share with others that you wish you knew when you started guiding or fishing in general.
Guiding is not about catching the most or the biggest fish. You're giving these people an experience, you're giving them something to remember. So whether that's you telling them a fun fact about the area or you taking some time to teach them a new technique, you're guiding them to a memory that they'll remember forever.
Yeah.
So not worrying about the fish so much, or capturing it. People love videos, people love pictures. I've gotten. I think it's safe to say that I felt myself definitely take more pictures as the years go on, and those produce better pictures that the clients always appreciate.
Thank you. What is some advice that you would give to somebody new coming into the industry?
Managing expectations of like their self and of the clients too, because you could be coming to this lodge and all of these lodge owners, they're salesmen too. They're trying to get clients to come to their lodge, so they're also going to try and get guides to come to their lodge. So they might sell you like an idea like, oh yeah, you'll get plenty of fun free fishing time and you'll have all kinds of time off, but then when you're actually in the crap, there ain't much time off, honestly. So just kind of understanding that, managing the expectation of the actual job and the clients like we talked about earlier would be probably best advice I could give.
Gotcha. It's awesome.
All right. It's our favorite part of the podcast. We're going to end it with your favorite guide story or fishing story.
I thought about this one a lot. Ever since I started listening to you guys, I've always like, which one would I do? Because there's so many. You meet so many great people out there. You talk to so many awesome people. You witness so many cool things. But the one for me has to be me and this guy are fishing the pack, and it's this guy. He's a retired Army lieutenant colonel. So like right there, we have that connection. He was one of those guys that, our lunch, if we were to stop fishing and eat lunch, it lasts 2 hours because we would just talk the entire time and just sit on the bow of the boat and just watch other people fish. And times like that is what I really appreciate. And so I'm having this day with him. It's afternoon time frame. We're on a pack. We're at the top of the pack, so it's a little bit wider, probably like 100 yards wide. and I'm walking the boat down because generally you don't really row down a lot of the times. There's sometimes if the water's high, then you can kind of row down, but generally, like, we were standing in the water, just walking the boat down, directing what's happening. And I'm walking the boat down close to the shore, and I'm just looking at the shore, looking for some fish. And generally on this river, the fish hold in the middle of the river. They don't hold on the edges because there isn't really structure on the edges. But I'm looking over, and there's this big rock that kind of juts out in the water, and it's creating a very small, like, little eddy right behind it. And then right above that rock, there's this tree branch that's dragging in the water. And on this bank, there's a shit ton of caddis going off. And, we've been catching it on caddis periodically in, like, the main part of the river, but not on the bank. And I look at that rock, and I see a little nose come up, and I was like, oh shit, this can't be too good to be true. Because this happened to me last week, but I messed it up, and I went over there too fast, and I got the client's expectations up, and it just didn't work out. And I made sure I kept looking there. Dave's fishing. I saw the nose again, and then immediately after that, I saw another nose. I was like, all right, here we go. And so at this point, I'm talking to him. I'm like, Dave, look behind this rock and just watch it. And he sees it. He sees it again. He gets excited. I mean, this guy is stoked. And I'm like, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to walk this boat down below this rock. We're going to get out. And we're going to catch this fish on foot. Because the one time that I tried to get it, I kept the guy in the boat. And it just kind of didn't, because the angle of that branch coming above the water just didn't work out trying to get it from the boat. So you got to get it from below the fish. And we get below the fish, we walk up there, and then there's two trout behind this rock. And there's one bigger one in front, and there's the smaller one in the back, just kind of how it's always going to be. That stronger fish is going to be leading the pack. And we're watching them feed, and we just kind of like sat there and watched them feed for a little bit, which was pretty cool. And then I'm like, all right, Dave, you're going to catch two fish. And then he looks at me, he's like, no, you're going to catch the fish. And I was like, no way, I can't catch this fish for you. And he was like, no, I'm serious, do it. And I was like, all right, well, if we're doing it, we're going to do it. So I set up my GoPro, and I got it on video of me casting to this trout, laying a caddis down, him taking it, me setting the hook, fighting the fish, holding the fish in front of the GoPro, dropping it back down. And that made my summer right there. And so then I caught the lower fish. So then he had to catch the bigger one that was above it. And I set the GoPro up for him. I was taking pictures with my camera and kind of coaching him through it all. And I had learned this from another client of, like, when we're fishing beads and you're trying to get the right distance, there's no need casting the distance over the fish to spook them. So I made him cast into the main river, just like to get the distance right. So then that next cast would just lay perfectly right in front of the fish. So he did that. And I mean, the first drift, that fish came like from 2 feet over and engulfed it. I mean, as soon as he set the hook, that fish exploded like you threw a 20-pound rock in the water. And I got pictures of, like, all of it. And it was just unreal. To be able to share that experience with him was just absolutely the highlight of my guiding years. It was one where it was like 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, and we left home. We weren't supposed to be home until 6, but it was like, screw it. The day's already been made. You can't top that.
Yeah.
That is cool. That is awesome.
That's cool, and you get to kind of remember and share that experience with your client as well.
Yeah, and there is plenty of those experiences. You get, when you're with the same people for an entire week, you just get to build relationships with them, and you get to know them more than who you're fishing with, because they become an actual friend at that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Heck yeah.
Well, Jordan, we appreciate you for coming on our podcast today. This has been awesome.
Yeah, guys, thank you for having me.
Yeah,
it's been fun. I hope that my story can be heard by those wanting to do it, and they can just really give them some insight on how to get it done.
Yeah. I mean, that's the reason me and Kyle started this. We wanted, people like you to come on and, show us that you didn't have a lot of fly fishing experience, or, you started out fishing this way, and you started, building that passion for fly fishing, and you got that drive, and you became what you wanted to become. And I mean, it's not an easy road becoming a guide at all, but you show people how you did it and how you got there. So if people are interested in guiding or, or just getting into the sport of fly fishing, now they'll kind of understand it from your story.
Of course.
Yeah.
And guiding is a really special thing, and I want everybody to go out there and do it if they have the desire to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Heck yeah. Well, Jordan, thank you for your time. And this is probably going to be our one of our longest episodes, which is perfectly fine with us. We know people will enjoy it, and just want to thank you for your time coming on.
Yeah.
And thanks for reaching out too. That's how we brought Jordan on the podcast. Is Jordan reached out to us, told us a little bit about his background, brief summary. And we're like, heck yeah, this is, like Keaton said, this is the type of people that we want to have on the podcast. People like Jordan. So we appreciate you reaching out.
Yeah, definitely, guys. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Well, this was another episode of the Young Guides podcast. Me and Kyle just want to make sure to thank everyone that's listening to the podcast and sharing our podcast. There's all types of platforms that you can listen to: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and our website, www.theyoungguidespodcast.com. If you want to learn a little bit more about Jordan, go to our section on our podcast, and you'll be able to go down and kind of learn about all our guests and where they guided and a little bit about them. And then there's also a little section about me and Kyle. This was another episode of the Young Guides podcast, and we'll catch you on the next one.